I'm very scared about how they've shown what new D&D Beyond is going to be. Like, they give you an example of if you join our early access list, you're going to get access to this Gold Dragon mini for our 3D tabletop. That's going to have a $6 price tag, and it's a digital asset that doesn't cost them anything to produce. I'm sorry, not anything to produce. It doesn't cost them anything to replicate. So now that it exists, it just prints money. That's not great.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns and Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're going to talk about the new D&D Direct. The new video just aired.
Yeah, they just dropped this randomly. It's got a bunch of announcements for their upcoming schedule and where the game is going, and I have some thoughts and opinions and more positives than negatives, actually.
Oh, good. I was going to say, I think I'm probably going to be more optimistic than you, but that's probably still true.
Yeah, probably. There are elements where I'm like, I don't see this going well, but
yeah.
Other things I am excited for. So, shall we go right into it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they just start with the new books, right?
Yeah, so they kind of start with like, oh, everyone loves D&D, and this is how I met my friends, and this saved my life, and all of the little bit of hyperbole. Not to say that it hasn't been great for a lot of people; it's been great for me as well. But they're selling it a little bit. And then they kind of move into what the player's handbook's job is, and I do think they talk a bit about how they were like, this is the first time we've designed it to teach you how to play the game before teaching you how to build a character. Which I don't think is as much like a selling point as a condemnation of how this game has worked in the past, right? That's just like, how has this been the way it's been allowed to be since it was created? How did not a single game designer go, maybe we should have the rules first and then tell people how to build their characters, right?
And well, it wasn't so much the rules. It's like an introduction to the game before the rules began.
Yeah.
Is what here's Dungeons and Dragons. It's a game where you can be whatever you want, whatever. And I'm not sure that they did. I mean, maybe they didn't have a full chapter, but I think they had like an opening paragraph or something in previous books.
Yeah, I will definitely say, like, my experience with people that were learning out of the old player's handbook very much was jumping around and sort of having to explain how the game is played before the book did. And I do think, from my understanding of the new PHB, there is a much more fleshed out section that's going through what everyone is doing, how people actually roll dice and engage with the system, I think it is a lot easier to have it be, you're going to be all in a space, in a collaborative role-playing game. You're going to make ability checks, attack rolls, saving throws, and you're going to roll dice. They're going to be modifiers you add to them, and they're going to affect the world in a bunch of different ways. If they go more into that in the new book, great. I think that's a positive direction. I do think the organization is one of their big selling points of the new PHB. We'll see if it pans out. But, it is...
I still think 99% of new players are just going to join existing players and learn that way.
Yeah, that doesn't mean, there shouldn't be this on-ramp, right? I think a group of teenagers that are picking the game up for the first time because they saw it on the internet, they saw some live play or whatever, they saw the Macklemores, or not the Macklemores.
I forgot about live play. It's even more unnecessary now.
Yeah, well, I mean... live play doesn't teach you how to play so much as show you some comedians having a good time. So, you do kind of want an on-ramp, and I do think having a book that someone picks up, they read it because they're the most interested, and then they teach their friends. That's a good place to be, and this book being an easier on-ramp for that is also, perks to it. We got a lot more, announcements and stuff that I think we're going to have plenty of time to talk about the new PHB and all of its inners and whatnot. I'm curious as to your thoughts on the staggered release of the DMG and the MM being so far removed from the PHB release, right? Is that odd to you?
I assume they have their reasons. I don't know. I mean, sure, it's odd, but no, that's as far as I've thought about it.
I find it particularly jarring that the MM comes last, just because that's the book that you need the most as the DM, because it is the stats that tell you how to play. I don't know, if someone picked up a player's handbook in September, November rolls around and they're like, okay, now I will get a dungeon master's guide, and then you're gonna have to wait 5 months before you can start running a game, right?
I wonder if this is like in the hopes that they'll just go buy the previous version and then buy the new one when it comes out.
That sounds like something that a cynical person would pitch in a boardroom. So I'm not opposed to saying that could have happened.
We're dealing with Hasbro here.
Yeah. I mean, like,
We did a video on their shenanigans from last year.
yeah, it's true. I think if the DMG doesn't have comprehensive rules for making monsters quickly and good, clean tables for these are the amount of damages that should be done at the different tiers to different kinds of characters. This is how you handle different party compositions and stuff like that as a dungeon master. This is how you present different kinds of challenges, which the DMGs in the past have failed at. They've failed at that miserably. I think this is gonna be just a weird lull where there's not gonna be a lot of D&D of the new edition. People are just gonna keep playing 5 because, well, they have the books for that, and they didn't release the books to let me play the new edition. I was DM it, right? Like,
Well, I mean, if you have the player's handbook and you're running, if you're a bunch of experienced gamers, you already have the old books. I mean, you can use the monsters, right?
you could, like, what I'm trying to think about, what about the audience that is jumping into the new edition, right?
Oh
To the
yeah,
people that said, this seems like a good place to jump in. I've been seeing D&D the last 3 or 4 years, right? It's been growing a little bit. It's been more in the pop culture mainstream through different avenues. New edition, time to go for it. You get a group together, they're all new and going for it at the same time again. I think the teenagers are the ones that's normally where the on-ramp happens, right?
yeah.
There's not an on-ramp for those people right now. There's not even like basic rules monsters available, from my understanding,
There
right?
there is fifth edition monster manual, and do you know any other reason besides the one I suggested why they would be releasing these so far apart?
I think another option that is fairly likely is disorganization and deadlines being missed over and over again, right? This is just the actual earliest release time they could get for this thing. I would also find as a plausible answer as to why it's being released so much later than the other two. Like a month between the DMG and the PHB, all right, that's not the end of the world. DMG, I don't think is that necessary book anyway. But the Monster Manual being like in February,
Yeah.
something went wrong, or someone is trying to milk and get all the last monster manuals of 5th edition off shelves. So I don't know. I hate it. I hate it. I hate that decision.
Yeah.
So outside of the 3 core books, there were a lot of announcements that I actually like a lot. We can start with the first adventure paths. They're sort of presenting, not paths, the first adventure compendium. And it makes perfect sense to me. It was what Rise of Tiamat was supposed to be for 5th edition, right? Where it's
Right.
the first adventure is about dragons. This is a series of adventures about dragons. It's 10 books in the Dragon Anthology. That's perfect. That's an exact right way, I think, to start doing this. You come in, you play one of the Dragon Adventures for whatever tier you're at. You can inject them into whatever game you're playing. It's an easy way to get the dragons in your Dungeons and Dragons. You can buy the book for one of the 10 adventures and feel like you made your money out of it, right? You don't need to run
Right.
15 levels of it to feel like it's worth it. This just seems like the right next step. I'm hopeful that things like Keys from the Golden Vault and Tales from the Yawning Portal led to this decision making, and hopefully we're going to see more stuff like this and fewer full campaign books, because I don't think they're as useful a tool. Whereas Dragon Anthology, I think it sounds like, at least how they pitched it, as a way more useful tool for this, right?
Sure. Yeah. And somebody said they were surprised at how many players they talked to that never fought a dragon before
Yeah,
in Dungeons and Dragons.
a lot of people play Dungeons and Dragons in specific themes, right? They want to do specific kinds of atmosphere and play. Some people want to do the different styles, the small little critters in Animalton and like Redwall style games. Some people want to play, just all human villains all the time. Cult.
Well, and also dragons feel like maybe they should be very powerful, and a lot of campaigns just never get that high.
Yeah, I really do think there was probably needed to be some lower tier, scarier dragons that were allowed to run around, right? Like,
I
I
mean,
don't.
there are
Yeah, okay,
just
who's gonna feel cool about killing a dragon baby, right? Like, that's the low tier option is, oh, you kill a white dragon wormling and it's CR4 and still TPKs third level players, right? Like, the lowest CR option you can get is still a huge problem and is a child. So that maybe we could have done something better than that as far as, challenge and low tier play goes, but who knows? Maybe this Dragon Anthology and or the new Monster Manual will make some adjustments to that. I don't know yet because it's not out. but we can hope.
Yeah.
I do like that they acknowledge, hey, we don't have enough dragons in our Dungeons and Dragons. I do think that's true. I think, again, Fizzman's Treasury Dragon is one of the best books in 5th edition, and hopefully they continue that mindset of just, hey, let's sell the actual second D in the D&D. New starter set.
That's one more
Okay.
thing. All right, I was going to say, I forgot in what section of the video they were talking about it, but they did mention that there will be more subclasses and stuff like that. So, you know, I suspect that all along, but yeah, new books, new subclasses.
Yeah.
And one thing they mentioned, what was it for the Forgotten Realms?
Mhm.
They're going to do that in 2 books, one Dungeon Master centered and one player centered, which that might be the same thing I was already talking about.
That's exactly what we were just talking about. Yeah, that's where they mentioned
Right.
new player options.
Yes, but you know, in the video we did not so long ago, you know, the problems with the D&D books. Sounds like maybe they're heading in the right way.
Hopefully. What
Yep.
I'm skeptical about is they just showed us that they're willing to take one book and split it into 3 parts. And if they give us Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, but 40 of the pages that were for player options are the player guide, and the 90 pages that were left over are now the campaign guide, I'm going to throw a fit, right? If there are 6 options in the player guide and it just is short and $50 still, and it's part of a package that is the Forgotten Realms Complete Collection, which is just used to be 1 book and now it is 2, I will be livid. I'm
All right,
hoping that's
you
not the
heard it here.
case.
When that happens, come back here and watch Sam throw a fit.
Oh, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. But my optimism in me, what little I don't think it's deserved. For the record, I don't think my optimism towards these new announcements is deserved. I think they've shown us quite the opposite, that I should be skeptical about these upcoming books. I'm hopeful that it's gonna be like 2 subclasses for every class, a bunch of new spells, like an actual robust Forgotten Realms centric player option, what the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide was supposed to be, and then also a playing in the Forgotten Realms, fleshing them out, letting someone, as opposed to having, Descent into Avernus be the Baldur's Gate book, you actually have a chapter on Baldur's Gate in a single campaign setting that you get to build out of. That you can go, okay, we're going to go from Baldur's Gate for 3 levels, Icewind Dale for these 3 levels, and you don't need full campaign books for those anymore. You can just have DMs do the thing they want to do in the first place, which is use this, get rid of the monotony of I have to build a city, I have to find the logistics of it all, give them those things in shorthand and let them make their own campaigns in these fun settings that exist. I think it's hopefully going to be a really great asset for actually playing in the Forgotten Realms as opposed to where it is right now, which is if you're not playing an Adventure Guide, you're just not playing the Forgotten Realms. At least that's what I've experienced, right? If you're not in a very specific book, you're in a fantasy world the DM made up. I think this might give us a real world say you are playing in a campaign your DM made up. It is still set in the Forgotten Realms for convenience. That's my hope.
Or there's just elements of it there, pieces that you can get, like you said, cities. You can call the city whatever you want, but here's the town hall, here's the blacksmith shop and whatever.
Yep.
They don't have to design the entire thing. That's just useful assets that you can dump into any adventure would be nice.
Oh, you can even, there's like cannibalizing the groups is a really easy thing to do, right? You just be like, I need a bunch of factions. Here's 7 easy ones. Great. Done, 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 done. Change 3 of the names to ones that feel more fitting for my world. Change a species or 2 to make it. These are the Dragonborn versions of them. And these are the weird rabbit folk people that I want in my setting. You can pretty easily copy paste stuff that you want. It seems like a useful DM tool. More useful than the campaign books, generally speaking, are, I find. That's the hope. Notably, they didn't announce any new campaign books, which I think should be a very clear indicator that those things have not been doing well. Because the fact that the new edition doesn't have one up until a year after, like they haven't slated one for release yet. That's okay, something needed to change, and they didn't make a change. It looks like, so that's good.
I don't know. Do you think they learned lessons from recent releases, or do you think they've just been planning whatever this is called 5.24 for so long that they just kind of like spun their wheels at the last few releases for the previous edition?
It feels like they were spinning their wheels for the past 2 releases. Like the Vecna Eve of Ruin is a nothing book, and the books before it were as bad or worse, right? Like the whole of the Planescape stuff was wildly underwhelming. There were a couple of decent adventures, like Wild Beyond the Witchlight is fine. There's decent stuff in like Victor Van Ricken's Guide to Ravenloft. Those books that were contracted out to other people to write worked out pretty well. But the core adventure stuff that they were producing at a very minimum, it doesn't seem to be selling, and it does look like this is different. Now, should they have maybe just canned Eva Vecna and canned the planar stuff and moved it into a better model with these newfound lessons and these new principles? I would say maybe, but again, I don't know. I'm not inside. I don't know the internal
Right.
workings of this complex machine. I'm sure there's a whole lot of bureaucracy and infighting and firings and hirings and nepotism and all
A
the
lot of
kinds of crap that
firings.
gets in the way of this, right? Oh yeah, definitely firings. Maybe less so the hirings department. They're continuing contracting a lot of these out to talented writers, which hey, that's good for some of the books and not so great for in-house and confidence in product because they're going to vary. Anyway, last part we haven't really touched on is the new starter set. Didn't they just release a new starter set like 10 minutes ago? Right? Like,
I
didn't
don't
Storm
remember.
Kyle just come out? Well, that was what, 2 years ago? Last year? Somewhere in that time frame?
Feels like it.
Yeah. It also is really bizarre to me that it was, again, just like a year or two ago that they made the expansion for the first starter set after they released the second starter set. And I'm like, what? This is a 14-year-old adventure that you're making an expansion towards. As we know, you're releasing a new edition. What are we doing? What's going on here? A lot of baffling decisions at the end of Five's lifespan. Hopefully some good changes though, and maybe this new starter set's like a
Clean
needed
slate. Yeah.
product. I would have loved to see it baked into the DMG. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think that would have been a pretty good tool to have in a Dungeon Master's Guide. Is a starter adventure, right?
Yeah, well, it depends on how big the starter set ends up being.
They're consistently pretty small. Like they gave you that big fat box, and inside there's like these little itty pamphlets that are like 10 pages, and I'm like, okay. I know a lot of people love them. The pre-gens are great. They do seem like a more board game version of D&D, which I'm here for. The accessibility is very high on them. But the content in them, let's not lie, it's not robust. It's not, I mean, they are cheaper, at least in the regular books, right? They're like $30 compared to the 50. So maybe that's more acceptable that there is less content in them, but that content could also be in a Dungeon Master's Guide, right?
You know,
Probably. Makes
but I
the Dungeon
mean,
Master's Guide
I
more
don't know if
valuable.
you value the but if you value the Dungeon Master's Guide for it being that, then you don't really want this like 30-page extra appendix that you're only going to use once.
So there's just been this like, the DMG has always been the ugly stepchild of the trio, right? Like it's never been a book that you've ever needed. I, as a DM, have never needed my Dungeons Master's Guide from this edition, at least. I don't know if this was necessarily the case in all the editions of old. There are some niche rules in there that you care about. There's normally the giant trove of items is the thing you grab
Yeah,
for most, right?
yeah.
There
The
were
treasure tables, the items, the
and like I'm if I had my perfect world, and I get that people hated fourth edition for a lot of things, a thing that I actually remember in my earliest days of D&D, whenever I was starting to play fifth edition, but I wanted more items, I didn't reach for the Dungeon Master's Guide. I reached for old $15 like item troves that fourth edition released because they just made a million of them. They just printed a bunch of these short, relatively inexpensive, just books that are just chunk of items. And like maybe they were inexpensive because the edition was not being played by anyone and people were trying to offload them, so maybe there was huge bargain sales or whatever. But for the most part, like you could just take the item ideas and wheel them into something useful. I would much rather have those products for me whenever I'd want them, right? If I'm in the market to do DM stuff, I'd rather just grab a random internet table of magic items than have a dedicated book of these are the canonical ones. Now, that's not to say it's not useful. I just don't see if that can't be the whole selling point of the DMG, right?
no.
Is that a fair assessment?
But yes, but I mean, it does have, like you said, random other rules, like I guess rules about drowning or falling or whatever. Like,
Those have been moved.
right?
They're in the PHP now, right?
Oh, are
That's
they?
what the whole.
I don't
There's
know.
a whole. They even brag about it in it. The people are buying it for the rules glossary at the end of the PHP.
Oh, right.
So, like, if that's no longer the purpose of the DMG,
Well, I guess we'll find out what is.
campaign building, like, I'm hopeful. And I say that I don't sound hopeful. It's probably going to be better than the fifth edition one is. The fifth edition one is like, oh, here's how pantheons can work, and here's the Forgotten Realms pantheon, and here's some other examples of pantheons, and here's some of the planar lore. And I'm like, that doesn't help me really run games. I don't want to read any of that. I'm going to skip to like the sections that I care about. There's decent sections like variant rules that I'm a big fan of because they'll let you
Yeah.
like customize your DMing experience. I think those are really useful. More of that I'd be a big fan of. I don't know. I guess the sense on the starter set could have been the DMG in my mind, and I don't know what the DMG is going to provide us. Commenters down below, let us know your experiences with Dungeon Master's guides, and if you found them useful, what your favorite parts of them are. Do you just use them as giant item indexes? That's kind of where I'm at, but outside variants, I do use the variant rules quite a bit. We talk about them quite a bit too. Yeah, yeah. One last thing we can kind of chat on here, though. They were talking about like Lego minifigs and secret layers and crap, a bunch of third-party products. That makes sense, right? Like we could expect that. They're gonna try and make and sell more stuff. I'm glad they're expanding further into Lego. That's a pretty good addition, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They'd have a brief moment talking about third-party creators, and they put some nice images up for the third-party creators they're working with. They're working with them through D&D Beyond's marketplace, which to me indicates that they're gonna pull back on what they actually produce, and instead they want to try and become like a platform for this kind of content. DM's Guild was sort of a dry run of this, it feels like, and they might be going wholesale into it with D&D Beyond. I have 5,000 concerns about D&D Beyond. I've always had concerns about D&D Beyond. I've never once. That's not true. I have purchased 2 things from D&D Beyond, and it was for recording and talking about this channel. I spent $7 on like the little the bonus adventure that came alongside the Planescape stuff and the Monster Expanded Compendium or whatever for one of the ones they released. I'm very scared about how they've shown what new D&D Beyond is going to be. Like they give you an example of if you join our early access list, you're going to get access to this Gold Dragon mini for our 3D tabletop. That's going to have a $6 price tag, and it's a digital asset that doesn't cost them anything to produce. I'm sorry, not anything to produce. It doesn't cost them anything to replicate. So now that it exists, it just prints money. That's not great. I don't.
That's how I feel about art in the books, and why would they be taking shortcuts with that? You only got to pay the artist once, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm irrationally annoyed about anytime they reprint art in any of the books that I've seen before. I'm like, this is on a magic card. Stop it. Stop it. I've seen this before. Oh. Yeah. D&D Beyond, I'm skeptical. I'm very, very skeptical. I get that it's a tool that people have used a lot, but it keeps screwing up. They keep making predatory decisions over and over and over and over again. I'm here to say, stop using it. Don't use D&D Beyond. It's not worth it. You can get digital versions of things as you need them, and you can find resources on the internet that will provide you any resources you need. And you can pair those with physical books too. You can have physical books on you when you're actually playing. That's fine and useful. Even Roll20, I am more of an advocate for using their content, because at least while their service might be iffy, I've had a very mixed bag with Roll20 over the years, although I've used them a lot. At minimum, they're consistent. I know what I'm going to get from Roll20. They're not going to screw me over. At least they're yet to screw me over. So, yeah. I have high hopes for the book releases. I have very, very low expectations for what will come out of D&D Beyond. And I think their virtual tabletop is not looking... I don't know. I'm not excited about that. Are you?
I not excited because it looks really complicated to use, and I can see it having a lot of limitations that just regular tabletop playing wouldn't have, or even like you said, Roll20, just the 2D face down playing.
You can go to Albert Rodeo right now, and it's literally just a free web hosted map. You can move tokens around. You can make Fog of War. It does 99% of what you want a battle map to do for free.
That said, it does look amazing.
Their pitch looks amazing.
Yes.
And like that is a non-final product that we have seen very little of. There were glimpses where if you didn't purchase their minis, they showed like just the flat discs that looked like crap alongside. Like it looked really jarring to see just these PNGs stapled to circles in a 3D space. And I have a hunch that if you're not doing the pre-made adventure stuff, you're either working with a library of incredibly expensive single purchase miniatures that you don't own.
Yeah.
I don't love that. Or you're working with, I present these little flat discs in an awkward 3D space with all of the same assets that I'm reusing over and over again. I can't import maps that I find like in 2D that are really accessible. I can't like use the Patreon or use the map makers that I support on Patreon in this in particularly easy fashion without me feeling like I'm getting screwed by not using 3D tech and stuff.
Right.
I'm not sold. I'm not sold.
No, I
I can spend $50 on Foundry once, and local host it, and I never have to pay a dime for that service ever again, and I can use that with my friends for as much as I want.
I think
Oh, I'm
we
not
are
seeing it.
still maybe like a decade away from what we saw on the pitch being easy enough and accessible enough to use to where it's going to be fun to play.
Yeah. Like if I'm gonna DM, I don't want to have to learn a whole new toolkit to give the presentation of
Right.
that a lot of the time.
But there's
Things
going to
like
be, I mean, there will be some people that welcome that challenge.
that's true. This is
Yeah.
just specifically not for me. It will
Yeah.
be for others. If you're okay spending the $5,000
It
that it's gonna net
it
cost
might
you over
be
your
for others.
lifetime, yeah. And then those people once again will see another angry Reddit tirade whenever they cut a feature that they promised they'd have for life. And people will be like, why can't I access these things I paid for? And they'll be like, we didn't know you wanted it. Because that's how it always looks.
Yeah. And then there's going to be the case where, the dungeon master spent 46 hours creating this citadel, and the players want to go run into the forest. I saw
And
a cool cave look over there.
yeah, I'm not confident that there's going to be a very easy way to flexibly switch around stuff like that when they're showing these really intricate rooms that you have to spend hours building.
Yeah.
And I'm not confident my player's going to go in that room. I can drag and drop a PNG in like 15 seconds. I can't create a room like that in the same amount of time. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's going to be issues. I'm not confident. The fact that they're trying to sell it using Baldur's Gate 3, I think is really funny. They're like, hey, remember Karlach? You like Karlach? She's going to be on D&D Beyond. You can have your own adventure with Karlach. And I'm like, I don't know how many real adults go and like, I want to play with my Karlach doll. And we're going to go on adventures with Karlach. Yay, Karlach. I feel like that's not the point. It's neither here nor there. I'm sure there are some people out there that are
Yeah,
excited
that
to
was
see this
not a
character.
selling point to me. I never played. I still haven't gotten to play Baldur's Gate 3 yet. But I I even like when I'm playing video games, I want to be able to create my own characters. I want to
Yeah,
name them. I want them to be what I want them to look like.
I think that's most people.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't have those statistics. All things considered, I think this is a net, like, the slate of books outside of the timing of the monster manual, I think looks decent. I'm kind of excited for it. I obviously would love to see like the new starter set kind of get bundled into the PHB, DMG, and MM as just like these are the 4 core starting items that everyone should access to. I think that makes sense that those 4 things would go together, but they stagger them out for reasons. But the other 2 books, or the other 3 books they've announced, the Dragon Anthology and the 2 Forgotten Realms books, if big if the Forgotten Realms player guide and campaign guide are actually worth 2 books,
Yes.
I'm in. If they're
I mean,
both 100
that's what
pages, you're
Crawford
getting
said.
scammed. So
This is the reason they're not one book is it's too much for one book.
that's
He said that in the video.
just demonstrably false about the other books they've recently released.
Yeah, well,
right? Like
did
there's
did he say that about the other books?
I don't remember. I would
Yeah,
guess
see, I don't
so.
know.
Someone came out and said publicly that this deserves to be in 3 books and not 1, and that person lied to us. Mort's Planet Parade is an appendice. It's 40 pages. Like, no, that's not a book. Yeah, I still think, despite the pessimism, I'm excited. Bob, are you excited about these?
Oh, I'm excited. Yeah.
I think there's
I am.
potentially good things happening in the future.
Yeah, I'm curious what new monsters are we going to see. Are we going to see some old ones that didn't make the 5th edition cut?
I so badly want them to bring back Eye of the Deep, but use the original art for Eye of the Deep because it looks like shit. It's incredible. It's so dumb. It's just like this ugly little, really nervous looking man, like 2 eye stalks and some claws. Oh my god, the Eye of the Deep is my favorite. Bring back him in his entirely like awkward form. That's what I want. Then I'll be happy. That's all I need about a monster manual. So
Anything in particular you're excited about?
I think I went over pretty in depth. I think
Yeah.
the thing I'm most excited for is the Dragon Anthology.
Yeah.
Player guide is also going to be pretty fun, I imagine. But I can't wait to sink my teeth into the new. Hopeful like you are that there's going to be cool new monsters in it. But yeah, I don't know. This looks good. I can't wait to see these things. I'll buy them if I see them and actually read them and find that they're good, not just buy all them like an addict because I've lost faith. So they need to win back my faith. Hopefully these will do that.
I don't believe you. I think you're going to buy them either way.
We'll
But
see.
time will tell.
Time will tell.
All right. All right. Looking forward to talking about these more in depth as they come out. But yeah, that was the new D&D Direct announcement and our thoughts on it. So thank you, Sam, for being here. Thank you everyone for watching. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? What are you thinking about it? Let us know. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.